for some reason our stream just disappeared, it's because we are bad at technology. I guess it's just maybe our age. I'm
Definitely
not
our
sure, but we are bad at technology. So yeah, we had scheduled this live to talk about tipping, which we're gonna do. We're still gonna do it, and I won't go on about this, but we had this. It was scheduled. We actually scheduled ahead of time. We were proud of ourselves for.
Had a thumbnail,
Had
had
a
all the
we had
description.
everything ready to go, and then we went to go live, and it would only stream vertically, so we were completely sideways and it was just a disaster.
Sorry
It's
about
a
that.
bad way to start the program here, but that's not what you're here for. You're here to talk about tipping on cruises and removing, not even just tipping, but removing automatic gratuities. It is something that people have strong opinions about. Emily just released, or we just released, but Emily was starring in a video about automatic gratuities, and we talked about how we evolved in our process for automatic gratuities and tipping on a cruise ship. So that's what we want to talk about today. The video has gotten quite a bit of attention, and so we're hoping that some people are going to join us here, ask us some questions, give us their opinions. There's 600 something
Over 600 comments.
comments
Yeah.
on that video,
People
and
really. I said let me have it in the comments, and you guys took me seriously. So yeah,
people are taking
Thank
it
you.
seriously. So yeah, and it is a serious thing. There's the crew on the ship count on that money. So I totally get that. It's just how it all works. And so I guess the first thing I want to do is just kind of talk just briefly about, which Emily did in her video, about kind of how tipping on cruises has progressed throughout the years. So Emily, you researched this vastly. How did tipping was tipping always part of cruising?
Well, tipping, cruising is kind of a service industry, so tipping has always been there, but the automatic gratuities, the system that they have now today, certainly was not always
How
there.
did it work? How did it work?
It used to work
in the beginning.
In the beginning, it was just like on your own discretion, you would decide whether or not you wanted to tip, based on how much how good of the service it was. So if your room attendant did a really good job, you would give them a
So
really nice
even
tip.
like on the Titanic. Were
Even
people,
on the Titanic,
were people
yeah.
tipping?
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
all the way back then, okay.
Yeah.
And so when they tipped, there wasn't gratuities added onto their bill at the
Nope.
ticket station. No,
No,
okay.
that was
so
not the case.
when did that start happening? When did automatic gratuities, that whole concept, and explain what automatic gratuities are, just in case somebody might not know.
Sure, yeah. So automatic gratuities, they started in the 1990s is when cruise lines started imposing them. And what happened was people were coming on cruises.
What are automatic gratuities?
Well, I was about to explain
Okay.
that. So what happened was people were coming on cruises, and they were maybe new cruisers, maybe not familiar with the system, and they weren't really sure what was the protocol, how much should they tip. They were very confused by it. So to make it easier, the cruise lines said, hey, we're going to take care of this for you. We're just going to automatically charge you a set amount every day. And so that's what automatic gratuities are. They're a set amount that's charged to your shipboard account every day. And if you've never cruised or you haven't cruised a lot, your shipboard account is not what you're paying beforehand. It's not the cruise fare. It's what happens when you get on the ship. You pay for everything with your little card that it opens your stateroom door, and you can pay for, if you buy a t-shirt in the shop there, or you buy a drink, or you buy specialty dining, all of that is charged to your shipboard account. So they also started charging the daily gratuities, so a set amount of tips, but they were determined, the cruise line was determining this amount rather than the passenger.
Right. So it used to be like your room attendant would come in and do an amazing job. He'd know your name. He'd put a mint on your pillow, and he'd remember that you liked ice. You ordered ice a couple of times, and so he'd always have like a cup of ice waiting for you. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the cruise, you're like, this guy like made my cruise so amazing. And so you drop him some cash, right?
Yep.
And so that was how it used to be done. And then the cruise line came in and was like, we want to make sure that everybody's dropping cash. So they come up with this concept of, we're just going to help you guys out. We're gonna come up with a number that we think is fair, and we're going to put that on your bill. And if you want, really want to, you can like beg us and we'll take it off of there. But
you'd be an absolute.
But you'd be
jerk.
a jerk.
You'd be a
but you'd be
horrible
a
person
jerk if you did that.
Yeah.
So instead of like tipping because somebody did exemplary service, it became the cruise line is just assuming you're going to tip and putting it on your bill, whether you get good service or not. So that is, and you can kind of hear the bias in my explanation right there. We used to be people that did not even question.
Yeah,
we didn't question the automatic gratuities. We always paid the automatic gratuities. And it was actually, I think, a comment on one of our videos that actually made me start to think about this.
Yeah.
And then you did all this research. So what do you think? I mean, what are your thoughts now about automatic gratuities and the tipping culture on cruises?
I think we're agreed on this. I have no problem with tipping people, but I want to be the one to decide how much it is and who's getting that tip. That is, to me, what tipping is. You know, when you're on land, you tip based on service, and you tip the person that has served you. You don't try and we have lots of things that were made by somebody's labor. You know, the clothes you wear, the strawberries that are in your fridge that somebody picked for you so you could pick them at the grocery store. That was all somebody's labor, but I'm not walking out to the strawberry field and finding the person that picked it so that I can tip them. I'm assuming they got paid fairly because I paid for it.
Well, that's what a lot of the argument is that the cruise lines, a lot of people will accuse the cruise lines of not paying their employees fairly and counting on us, the passengers, to step in and subsidize the crew with tips. So there is the great debate of should the cruise lines up the wages of the... We have a comment here, guys. We're going to just take a look at that.
I can
read it?
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got means. We did increase our technology slightly.
Yeah,
from last time,
a little. So what's the comment?
Okay, so the comment says from Come Sail Away With Me, who just left us a really nice comment on another video we did.
Thank you.
So thank you and hello. So on my first cruise, 2000 Sea Princess, they had envelopes out and listed recommended tips in the patter by type of crew member, which was $3.50 per day for the steward, $2.50 for the waiter, $1.50 for the assistant waiter. So yeah, that was a way that they had done it. And he's saying here in the 2000s.
Well, it's gone up a lot.
So so it's gone up a lot, but also the automatic gratuities. You know, they started being a thing in the 90s, but they didn't become. It wasn't just like blam. It was everything automatic gratuities. It was kind of a gradual thing that more and more cruise lines started implementing it.
Yeah, I remember envelopes being in the cruise rooms. There was automatic gratuities at that point, but they were also gave you envelopes in case you wanted to put a little bit extra on there. And I think the envelopes with a recommended amount is a great idea. I think they should go back to that. And so thank you, Come Sail Away.
Yep.
That's actually a great point, and I think that's a nice happy medium. It's like you get to tip directly to the people that made your cruise special, and that is really where my opinion comes in. Is I want to tip more to a person that like really, the waiter that knows your drink order and your name and your kids' names and or whatever, a little bit about you, and really makes your trip special. I want to give that person a little bit extra cash instead of just this pool where everybody on the ship gets a cut out of that pool. And Emily, I'll let you talk about this. It turns out that when they pool the money, the cruise companies sometimes start to do a little bit of fishy business with that money. And there's a contract that you showed in your video that actually shows that. Will you explain that contract?
Before we get to that, I just want to read the comment again we got. So Come Sail Away With Me says, I think it was around $7 per day total recommended back then. And I agree and like that too. It's hard to know how to split up the money fairly and accurately. And that's a good point. It is nice to have some guidelines like how much should you give every person. But I think in the end, it should come down to the individual passenger decides. And that's just the way, I don't know, that's just what I believe. It works. That's,
And like a lot of people make the point that, well, what about the laundry person? They should get a cut of the tips. And what about the person, sweeping the deck on the Lido deck and all this kind of stuff? In my opinion on that, and this might be controversial, but those folks aren't front-facing service. So if you're not front-facing service, like when you go to a restaurant, you don't tip the person that sweeps the floor. You don't tip the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Sometimes the waiters and waitresses tip those people out. They give a percentage of their tips, but not always. And so I think that it should be up to the rest of the staff if they want to tip out other members that support them. But I don't think that the money that I'm intending to give to my room steward or to my waiter or waitress or a person that is front facing and actually taking care of me on the cruise, I don't think it's fair to assume that a percentage of the money that I give them is automatically going to everybody else. I'm trying to give that money to that individual person because they're front facing and they made my experience special. So that's where I stand on it.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that it goes into the tipping pool, and when they find out, I mean, it's kind of like a con. It's like, wait a second, I had, such a great relationship with Mike, my bartender, and he really got to know me, and I gave him this money because I wanted him to have it, and now I'm finding out that Mike had to share it with all these other people, and maybe you didn't even like the other bartenders. Maybe you
gave it to Mike because you like Mike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
anyway, let's get back to there's this contract that's online that there's no way. I mean, somebody could have faked it. I don't know why anybody would fake it, but talk about that contract a little bit.
Yeah, so this contract, which is in the video, you can see a screenshot of it. It comes from a Royal Caribbean crew member, allegedly, and there was no reason for me not to believe this. So, but like Joe said, it's hard to know what to trust sometimes, and so, and we can answer that question in just a second, just to get to your point here. So the contract, it shows that the crew member had a guaranteed salary. It was called a guaranteed salary. And then it showed how many tips that crew member made based on their cut of the automatic gratuity pool. And then it showed the tips were deducted from the guaranteed salary. So in other words, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but let's just say for easy math, that the crew member had a guaranteed salary of $1,000. And their tips that they brought in was $400. So Royal Caribbean, on the paycheck, they only gave them $600 because they subtracted the tips. And then I assume they get another paycheck from the tipping pool that was $400. But whatever, the tipping, the automatic gratuities was deducted from the guaranteed pay. But so here's the deal. If the crew member, if more people had removed their automatic gratuities and only, his share was only $200,
then Royal Caribbean has to pay their employees. So
on the other hand, what if people were like, oh man, this was such a great cruise, we tipped a lot, so he got an extra $200, he got an actual total of $600 tips. Then Royal Caribbean would have only had to pay $400 to this guy. So but either way, all those ways, the guy was only going to get $1,000 no matter what.
He signed a contract that said that's how much he was going to get paid.
So he gets
So even if there was tips, he wasn't going to get more than that. It just made it so Royal Caribbean had to pay him less. We don't have definitive proof that this. We have evidence that's online, and so I don't want to get sued by Royal Caribbean. But it sure looks like that is at least in sometimes how tipping works, and cruise lines are using it to have to pay less so that they can put more money in their pockets.
And just another note on that, Royal Caribbean was the pay stub that we found as actual physical evidence online, but there was circumstantial evidence, other crew members talking, that makes it very likely that many, if not all, of the other cruise lines follow something like this. I don't want to say all because I'm sure, and I know Virgin Voyages is different, and so not all, but many of the other cruise lines follow the same guaranteed pay structure. It's a common pay structure, and that's fine. On
Carnival, John Heald, the brand ambassador John Heald, came out and said directly, on his Facebook page, that if you give a cash money tip to anybody, your bartender, your waiter, your room attendant, that they just get to put that in their pocket and they don't have to share it with anybody. And that actually changed. That was also part of my change of opinion on this. It's okay, then I can actually give somebody a 20 or a 50 or whatever I want to give them. They can put it in their pocket and they actually get to go home and share that with their family. This person that really made my cruise special. So that's something that I think it should be remembered. If you give them cash, they apparently get to just keep that cash. They
Yep.
don't have to pool it with everybody else and share it. So
Yeah.
that's an important point to me, because sometimes people just really, really make your vacation special. And they should be. Tipping is a good concept, I
Yeah.
think. It's just like the cruise lines, or big companies a lot of times, and I don't know all the details. The fact that cruise lines keep the subjects so shrouded in mystery is a little bit suspect, right?
Yeah.
Makes you think that some of these rumors are probably true about them using it to put more money in their pockets. And that kind of sucks, right? I mean, there's this guilt trip that people will give you that if you take off your automatic gratuities, then do we have more comments?
Yeah, I was going to put a comment in there and interject it.
Well, just one second. That you're a selfish person, but maybe we should say, hey, cruise lines, maybe you're being a little bit selfish. You're the ones making, millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just a point. So we have another question.
So we have a question comment. Yeah. So Alice Williams asks, does a crew know when you take tips off? Would you be treated differently because a tip is not guaranteed? So as far as that goes, I think it depends on the cruise line. But most recently we've been doing a lot of Carnival cruises. I don't think the crew knows. I don't think that they get like some list or anything. And I know that there has been things stated out there where people say, oh yeah, there is a list. Maybe there is a list somewhere, but I don't even know if the crew care. And if the crew, the crew understands their contract, and if the guaranteed pay is the way that they're getting paid, then they understand that if somebody removes their automatic gratuities, it's not going to affect the crew that much, honestly. And so they're not going to care. And we have never had an experience where I don't think we've ever had poor service after we've taken our gratuities off. I wouldn't say. I mean, would you?
No, I wouldn't. Once in a while, though, you'll take your gratuities off, and then you'll have like a little bad experience with somebody, and you'll be like, do they know? But
that's more suspicion, I think.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of paranoia.
Yeah.
One of the other points that I've seen come up recently in some of the discussion around this subject is cruise lines saying, and I think they do this in Australia, saying that they're going to just put the gratuity money onto the cruise fare, so that when you book your cruise, the tip money is already in there. And I don't know if would you still be able to take it off.
No. When it's in your fare like that, it's part of your fare. And sometimes they show it separately. From my understanding, in Australia, like you get one bill and it says your cruise is $500, and then it will show you the breakdown of this was the cruise fare, this was the taxes and fees, the port fees, and this was the gratuities. So, oh wow, thank you.
Hey, that is so awesome.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much. That's really great. Come sail with me, right?
Come sail away with me, which is,
you rock.
By the way, one of my favorite handles of all time. I really like that.
Cool. So anyway, if like a cruise line decided to just start putting the tip money in with the cruise fare, so basically raising the price of cruises, and guaranteeing that crew members are going to get a certain amount, hopefully, of that money. Maybe they're going to get raises too, the crew on the ship. That's a solution. I don't love that solution because it's going to cost passengers more money, and the cruise lines are still getting out of having to just pay a little bit more to their crew. But what would happen like in Australia, and I think in a lot of parts of Europe, tipping really isn't.
When I go to Disney World, I don't tip Tinkerbell and Goofy.
Yeah, me either, man. No. Me either. I think what would happen, so in Australia and Europe, they're not heavy tipping cultures.
Right.
Tips aren't that expected. So over there, it makes a little bit of sense to do that if you want to make sure that your crew are getting tip money. But in America, what would happen, I'm almost sure, is that people would pay the extra money, and because we're Americans and we're generous people and we are a tipping culture, they just keep tipping. And so it would just mean that we would pay even more for the cruise. So I don't think in an American market, the right thing to do is to add tip money onto the cruise fare, because people are still going to tip, because Americans are good people. So actually on that point, I want to see if I can get to it.
we put up a community post. So if you haven't seen it, you can go over there and you can vote on it. I'm just going to try
Just
to
go
get
to our Embrace Today page and then look for posts.
look for the post tab,
And
which you
there's
have to
a
like
poll.
go over a little bit from the videos.
The latest post is
Yeah.
a poll and people talking about how they handle tipping on a cruise.
Yep.
So you should just read it.
Yeah, so as of right now, the responses are, I keep automatic gratuities in place and sometimes tip more. So this is what Joe's talking about. People keep them in place and then they tip more besides. 65% of the response, they do. That's what they do. 30% say I remove automatic gratuities and hand out cash tips. So
that's our people right there.
Yeah. We're in that 30%. 2% say when I cruise with my partner, so we've got 2 people here, we leave 1 set of gratuities on, and it got cut off, but the implication is, and then you maybe tip more in addition to that, but you always leave 1 set of automatic gratuities on. And this is what some people in the comments said was their solution to make sure those back of house people are getting some share of the tips. So, and then 3% are those people that say, and I don't want to be judgmental here, I was going to say something in jest, but I don't want to. So, I never tip in any form unless I receive truly outstanding service. So, I guess those are the Australians that responded to our cruise. So, but yeah, so that's what the results are right now. If you haven't voted yet, go to our community page and put in a vote where you lie on that.
We have gotten some. There was you mentioned the Australians, and I love Australians, and I love Australia. We're going to Australia on a cruise ship in a few months here, so I'm excited about that. But Australians do have their opinions about American tipping culture. We had a Australian come into the comments and say, what did he say? He was like, basically.
Something like us Americans have completely messed up the tipping or something.
He was pretty blunt about how he thinks Americans are idiots because we tip, basically. And yeah, very strong opinions. So yeah, tipping's different. We have here, come sail away with me. As
a solo cruiser, will the steward be annoyed with me? I won't tip double, but I will tip more than the per passenger rate. I don't think so. I have not thought about
that's actually a great point. If you're a solo, they're getting half the amount they usually do, at least from the room, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's like a Norwegian solo room.
Yeah, it's already
like that. So that's a great point. Come sail with me, and I doubt, in my experience, and I'm guessing in most of yours, the cabin stewards are just some freaking really good people.
Mm-hmm.
They do not seem to have malice, and I'm sure that they probably have certain passengers that annoy them, because have you guys seen some of the way that people keep their rooms?
Oh my gosh.
The partiers, you know, just stuff all over the place, and they expect the room stewards to clean that mess. But I don't think that they would hold against a solo cruiser. In fact, I think
I honestly feel like they might even go out of their way to help you out if you're looking for things to do as solo passengers and that kind of thing, to point out the different activities. So yeah, I don't think they'd be annoyed at all.
So talk a little bit about, do you still have the chart of the different...
Although if they're not really getting the money, will it matter to them at all? Because he says agree, always fantastic.
That's a good point. Do you have the chart handy of different cruise lines and what they charge for daily gratuities?
Yeah, so that's actually, it's at the very beginning of the tipping video that we put out. So if you want something just in one place, you can go and look at that and pause. But ask me questions.
Well, who charges the most for daily gratuities of the major cruise lines?
Sure. So of the major cruise lines, the cruise line that charges the most is Norwegian. Norwegian cruise line charges the most.
And it's
$20 daily.
Norwegian, and I learned this.
Oh, yep. Alice knows that, yeah.
And I learned this from your video. I didn't know this before I watched Emily's awesome tipping video that you guys should all check out if you haven't. Norwegian doesn't call them gratuities; they call them service fees.
Service charges, yeah, and I think that's actually maybe a relative. I'm not sure how long that's been going on, but I think it's a relatively recent change that is now a service fee, and I didn't quite get. And actually, I'll touch on that because that comes into play with MSC too. But on Norwegian, I'm not positive if you need to pay that before you get on the cruise or not. It was not clear on the website. But it's a service fee, and they don't say that they will refund it. They don't say you can take it off or that it's optional. They say if you have a problem with service on your cruise, please come see us at guest service as soon as possible, and we will do everything we can to make you happy. That doesn't mean necessarily giving your money back.
So you're going to have to fight to get those gratuities out
yeah.
there. It was NCL jumped from 16 to 20
per person.
Wow.
Charged every day, yeah. Now, Alice, do you know, is that something that you have to pay before you get on the cruise ship, or is it still charged to your shipboard account? That's the question that I wasn't sure of, and we haven't booked a Norwegian
Is that
cruise,
what you have on there? 20 a day for?
20 a day, yep. And then, so all the cruise lines, they have like the set amount for a regular room and then a higher amount for their, whatever their suite category is. And on Norwegian, it goes up to 25. So it's 20s for regular, 25 for the suite. Yeah.
Now, what is the least expensive?
Yeah, so that's MSC. And so on MSC, they also call it a service charge. And it's very clear that that is paid at the time of booking. So it's, but it's $16 per person per day. But here's the interesting thing. That's the least expensive of all the cruise lines, MSC at $16, and the only cruise line where kids actually pay, I believe it was half. For kids 12 and under, they only pay half of that, so it's $8. Which totally makes sense. I mean, there are a lot of parents in the comments that are like, why am I tipping? I'm in a cabin with my 2 kids and my husband, and we're tipping for 4 people, and it's just one cabin that they're cleaning, and these kids aren't creating that much more mess.
Yeah.
And so this is, it's a very good point. So
yeah, that's
so
interesting.
MSC has actually addressed that. But again, that is, and officially MSC calls it the hotel service charge, and it is also probably going to be very hard to refund. And this I know was a recent change. I'm suspecting it might have been changed when they changed their drink package rates, which was in March, I believe. Because when we cruised on MSC last year, they did, at that time, they were still charging it to your shipboard account. But now it has to be paid in advance.
Interesting.
So, yeah. Times they are a-changing.
Times are a-changing. Yeah, loyalty programs are changing, as I'm sure you've all heard.
Yep.
And things are changing. Things are changing in the cruising world. And it was another thing that your video, I'm Steve, by the way, easier than... Come sail away with me. It is a little bit easier, but not as creative.
Yeah.
I like it though, Steve. So something else that I took away from your video was like just how drastically, tipping is what your subject matter was, but like cruising in general is evolving like rapidly. Through these years, and it seems like it's just continuing to, and it seems like it's going into like the more amusement park type.
It is with all these private islands coming up, where all the cruise lines have their private islands, and it's like they're doing sailings where it's just going to the private island. Yeah. In fact, I was we're going to be doing a follow-up to this tipping video just to answer all these comments that are coming up, and I was doing a little bit more in-depth research on tipping on cruise lines and just how cruise lines are working with this, and came across a statistic that cruise vacations are the fastest growing vacation over the last like 2 or 3 years. And I don't remember what that statistic was. A lot of numbers going through my head, but it was like they showed this bar graph of like, Airbnb vacation, amusement park vacation, whatever, and then, or like all inclusive paid resorts, and then cruises. It was like astronomically more increase on that. So
that's really something. Cruises are great. I mean,
yeah, we really like cruising.
We obviously really like cruising. It's interesting why, like, in the last 7 years, whatever it's been, is it just blowing up? Because it was always great.
Yeah.
I mean, but all of a sudden it's just absolutely blowing up. Our culture is shifting for a travel. Cruising makes travel easy, right? I mean, it makes it so that your hotel and your restaurants are taken care of, and you can just kind of, a lot of the stress of traveling is taken away, and you can just kind of relax more. And I guess that's the big draw. But why all of a sudden this huge surge? I'm good with it. I guess I'm a little resistant to the amusement park thing with cruising and the huge mega ships and all that kind of stuff. I like the big ships, but I do think that there's still a market for the smaller, more intimate, personal cruise experience. That's something I really like. I'm getting off of the tipping subject here, though, and just talking about cruising.
But just to respond to that a little bit, another statistic I found was that the luxury cruise atmosphere, which I didn't really, that wasn't my purpose of research at the time, so I didn't really look at that too much, but apparently the luxury cruise ships has increased dramatically as well, and I'm not sure what was being counted as luxury, but yeah.
What does Alice say to us here?
Let's see. Royal Caribbean just opened their new private island in Nassau, Bahamas. You have to buy a day pass, which is quite different from other private islands, and the prices are outrageous. I did not realize that you had to buy
You have to buy
day
it.
pass.
It's not included in the cruise fare. I did not know that. I obviously haven't been there yet. I'd love to go.
I remember I think it was actually the first time when we were in Nassau. I don't remember, but we went by there and we saw where it was going to be built. And at the time, it was just like an empty beach with some construction things there. So yeah.
So the ship, if you opt not to buy your way in, do you just stay on the ship? Is that the
stay on the ship or explore Nassau, I suppose.
Or yeah, that's right. Okay.
Right. That's interesting.
That is interesting
because
they
yeah.
Royal Caribbean is
amazing
at making money. And I think Carnival got jealous, and that's why they are changing their loyalty program. I
think so too.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else about tipping?
Well, trying to think of.
We
got so off topic. I lost my train of thought.
We're losing the form.
Oh, you know what? What we were gonna do is go and look at the comments, and I had a couple picked out that I was gonna just kind of call out. Let me get to that. So, yeah. So the comments just like they just keep going, and it's just been really interesting to read them all. Oh, here's one that actually just came in recently from GR881. So I think it's Great 81. So everybody has such clever little names. I believe that this discussion would be more beneficial if the discussion concentrated on what you just showed us. The word gratuity is being misused by the cruising company. If in fact that pay statement is true, the employee's pay is being supplemented by the consumer through gratuities, in quotes, which means the employee isn't receiving tips on top of their basic pay, which is a big difference. And this is exactly the issue. You know, whether you keep automatic gratuities on or not, you know, that's, I think, each to his own. I see people that have been, you know, really arguing for keeping them on and feeling very strongly about it. And I think that's fine as long as you understand how they're being used. But if you don't know where they're going to, well, I just think that that's really deceptive.
If you're in a financial position that keeping on the gratuities or not keeping on the gratuities just isn't going to make your life any better or worse, keep them on. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think the expectation of it from the cruise lines is what I have a problem with. And I am going to, and you did this in your video, so I'm just going to mention, and I'm sure he doesn't mind the mention even on a little channel like ours, but Matt from Royal Caribbean blog, who, you know, we've been listening to for
a while,
years.
yeah. Our first cruise was a Royal Caribbean.
He talks in some of his videos about his tipping. Mm-hmm. And Matt, I'm assuming, is doing pretty well financially because the man tips like no one else. He's tipping. Wasn't there a comment where they added it up and he's tipping like $3,000?
Yeah, somebody added up all the tips that he was giving through a cruise, and he was like, "Man, if you did all this, you're looking at an extra $1,000 to $2,000 in tips on your cruise. It's ridiculous." So. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you can do it, hand out the money, but I can't do that. But go, Matt, and you know, is there a point where you're is there a point where I hate to say tipping too much, but maybe there is a point where you're tipping too much.
You know, if you can afford it and that's what you want to do, great.
You're making a lot of
fine.
people happy.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's great.
So come sail away with me, Steve. says, I mentioned one issue on an earlier video
Oh,
regarding princesses.
Steve is come sail away
Yeah,
with me.
that's his name.
Oh crap! Steve, I'm a little slow. I thought Steve was a different person.
No.
Hey, Steve.
So I mentioned one issue on an earlier video regarding princess packages. They include gratuities, but if you're getting princess insurance too, you're paying an extra 9 to 12% in insurance gratuities. So yeah, exactly. So he's saying if you have prepaid your gratuities or you've gotten them prepaid in a package like the princess packages, and then you buy travel insurance through the cruise line, they're going to insure the total amount of whatever you paid for the cruise. So you're insuring your tips, basically. Which is a little ridiculous, and I know it's like, okay, it's 9 to 12%. Maybe it's not that much extra. Maybe it's like $20 extra. I don't know. Depends on the cost of your cruise. But hey, that's your money. That doesn't seem to be right. But and then we've got Anonymous. Last cruise, MSC February 2025. No issue in removing daily gratuities. We tip when we interact with the crew. On a 7-night, that's in excess of $200.
Okay, and MSC was one of those where they call it a service fee.
Hotel service charge. So the change happened it was either March or April. I honestly can't remember. That was a change for the drinks. So I'm wondering if the change for the gratuities happened then, because like I said, I know that it hadn't been like that when we sailed with them either. So, but as of February, apparently removing the gratuities wasn't a problem.
Gratuities. Cash tips.
Yeah. And that's great to know. If anybody's been on an MSC cruise more recently than that, let us know. Yeah. I agree with you on gratuities, though I've never taken them off yet. Many people try to shame those who take tips off. Does it make us cheap? Yeah, that's the one thing I've noticed in the comments.
There is shaming. Shaming, and that's part of the reason we wanted to do this. We talked about it before we broached this subject, and we're like, should we even do this video, because we knew we were going to get a lot of kickback. And should we admit that we take our gratuities?
Yeah.
And we didn't used to. Like I say, it's like an evolution of just realizing that the tip money wasn't going necessarily to the people that were making our cruise special. And we are certainly not saying don't tip. We for sure tip.
That's not what we're saying.
But we bring cash and we just hand it to these people, and their faces brighten up. Yeah. I mean, and these are the people that made our faces brighten up through the cruise experience. So it just feels better to us to give the actual people money that they get to put in their pocket.
Yeah, and on that note, I just want to say that in my original princess video, where I was a little kind of joking but cast a little bit of shame the way of people that take off automatic gratuities. So for all of you that saw that and were offended, I am really sorry. And for those of you that left comments and told me I should reconsider my position, I was willing to listen to you.
It just goes to show you, live and learn. You just live and learn. Life experience.
Yeah. So, there was one in here that I really wanted to read, but I'm not going to be able to find it now. There's so many comments. But here's somebody says, automatic gratuities started when there were too many ships, which caused prices to go way down, which attracted riffraff to go on the cruise. The riffraff didn't pay any gratuities, so staff were getting stiffed constantly. Auto gratuities tried to make up for the problem created by greedy cruise companies overbuilding too many ships. The only way to fill them was to attract people who couldn't afford the upper middle class cost of cruising. These low let class, maybe low life, I'm not sure, class people not only don't tip, they lower the experience for the more classy people who are not socializing with the riffraff. I blame the greedy billionaire cruise investors for the series of problems. They aren't affected because they're on their private yachts. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in that. First of all, I completely disagree with the whole riffraff, people bringing down cruises. That's just not called for. One of these people that wants to act all hoity-toity and pretend like he's way up here and there's these people down here. No, you know what? If we just all were more accepting of each other and got along, there's no need for that.
Let me just say, to his point, and I don't agree with him either. I don't like the degrading people thing at all. But what if a group of people? So his point was they lowered cruise prices and lower income people came on the cruises and then stiffed or didn't tip at all.
Yeah, so
and
he's
that's
saying that
why
first,
they decided to. I don't think that's why they did automatic.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting take. I don't think that's true, but he's saying that cruise lines built more ships, so then they had to fill the ships, so they lowered the prices. So then, because the prices were lower, riffraff could come on, and the riffraff didn't pay.
I'm
for
pretty
their
sure
tips.
I'm riffraff.
Yeah. So
yeah,
as
I
riffraff,
take
I
offense
want
to that.
say,
My friend, I take offense to that.
I tip as riffraff. So.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll take away from that is I think that there is an expectation in the American culture to tip. And so I think tipping is good. I actually think you should tip. I don't think you should. I think you should tip based on merit, though. I really think you should tip based on merit. And I think the pricing per day that the cruise line recommends you tip should be taken in consideration. And I think if you got crap service, you should tip a little bit below that. If you got great service, you should tip a little bit above it. If you got average service, maybe tip right there. But just hand cash to the people that are making your cruise special. That's my take on it. That's an interesting comment, though, and
Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
and it actually has some kind of logic to it. But I think it's a little bit simplified.
Point. Yeah,
but yeah.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about this is that there's so many comments, and some people I feel like they just really aren't seeing the situation. I don't know. It seems like they're not getting the whole picture. But then some people just have a take on it that's completely different, and I'm not going to be able to find it, but there have been 2 or 3 people that say, like I mentioned earlier, that they cruise as a couple and they take off one set of automatic gratuities because they do want to make sure that the back of house still gets something, but they also want to be able to tip directly and tip more to the people that really make their cruise memorable. And so that's their solution. I think that's a good solution, and it works for them. So yeah, there's a lot of people that are saying that it's pretty clear that the automatic tips are just another part of the base fare. This is JR1210. Carving them out as a separate voluntary charge enables the cruise line to advertise lower cabin rates, which is a common pricing scam in the corporate world. Chop the total price up into several pieces, and it becomes harder for the customers to recognize exactly how much they are being charged. I mean, this is exactly right. And of course, there was a law that just got passed in the U.S. about junk fees that made it so that now cruise lines have to include the port fees when they advertise their cruise fare. But because the automatic gratuities are, voluntary, they're not including those.
Yeah.
So
I think that I love that they have to now put the taxes and fees in the cruise fare. So like it used to be, it's like book a cruise for $3.
Yeah.
But it was
we'll pay you to take a cruise.
But it was actually like $300. Yeah. So
ridiculous. So let's see. Try to find a few more of these comments that it's just so hard to. Oh yeah, this is actually one I wanted to read. I found one. Okay, so this is Ted Walford 7615. If you remove the automatic gratuity and then cash tip your steward, he'll be getting double tipped. That's of course because he'll still get his share of the total automatic gratuities collected, which total is decreased only by a tiny percentage by removal of your automatic gratuities. The cruise company isn't going to hold anything back from all the staff who gave you service, and that's fine if that's what you want, but you should know that your cash is in addition to, not in place of what he'd receive anyways. So, yeah, I mean, this is a really complicated point, I think, to get across, but he is correct. So, as long as the automatic gratuity is in place, if you take off your automatic gratuity, it's not like one person taking it off isn't going to influence, like, that vast pool of which somebody else calculated, and it's like $100,000 plus for each cruise ship that they're bringing in on every cruise.
Which is just, give or take quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, because cruise ship sizes and length of cruise and everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's an astronomical amount of money coming in as the tips. You take off your 150, 200 of automatic gratuities that you were charged. It's gonna make it's a very small drop in that bucket. But then you're going, so your room attendant, your waiters, whatever, they're getting almost the same amount that they would have from automatic gratuities, but then you're tipping them on top of that besides. So then they're getting double tipped. So yeah, this is true, but there's nothing you can do about that. I mean, it's the way the system is set up, and
And double, if you're a crew member, you love that.
Yeah,
You
I
love
mean, that's
getting-
great for them.
You
And
absolutely love that, and I love the crew members. So I hope
Yeah.
they're getting double tipped. I hope they're
but
getting
this
rich.
is also like ignoring the fact that of the whole guaranteed salary that we had talked about earlier. Because if the guaranteed salary thing is legit, then what he's saying doesn't matter because they're not actually getting anything extra from the automatic gratuity pool anyways. So like it's just so complicated because it's not transparent in the least.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's like when you give money to a charity, and then and you feel good about that, right?
Yeah.
And then later on, you find out, you see some 60 Minutes report or whatever about how that charity has just been sued or something because 85% of the proceeds are going to them buying the CEO's fund to buy a new yacht, or something like that, and like only 15% of your money is actually going to the charity. It's really disheartening when you find out that the money that you are graciously giving to, whether it's a cruise line or a charity or something like that, is being misused and used to just line the pockets of rich
not even
people.
necessarily misused, but not used in the way you thought.
Exactly.
It's still going to the crew, but you thought it was going to the crew in the terms of the gratuities. You thought that it was going in addition, and it's not necessarily.
Yeah.
So,
which is why cash money, hand them that cash. Although some of the cruise lines, you can't get a straight answer from most cruise lines, but Carnival in particular said if you give them cash, they get to keep it. Some of the cruise lines, isn't there some evidence that even when they get cash, they're supposed to pool it?
well, evidence is a probably stronger word than we should use here. There's
rumor.
There's rumor. There's circumstantial
Evidence.
Yeah, there's people that have said, but it's so hard to know what is fact and what isn't. The reason why I put that pay stub up there is because I found it on, I found it in several spots, but I found it on a blog that other crew members were contributing to. So everything around it seemed like it looked pretty legit. So
you can believe everything you see on the internet, obviously.
But so here's another one, Fidel Rudio, and he left a really long comment, so I won't read all of it, but think of it this way. The dishwasher needs soap and other materials to perform their job. Do they share their tips with the person who orders the ship's supplies? Without soap, he couldn't wash the dishes.
That's
How
a
about
great
the cooks?
point.
Do they share the tips with the fisherman who caught the fish, or the farmer who raised the cow, or the butcher? No, it is included in the cost of the meat and the fish. Same goes with every other person working behind scenes. And he goes on for a long time, actually. But in the end, he says, next I will be asked to tip the engineer keeping the engine working, the staff doctor who was waiting for me just in case I fell ill, the captain for getting us to the right port on time. Where does this stop? Where does the cruise line's responsibility end and my responsibility begin? That's...
Who is that?
That was Fidel Rudio.
Yeah, I love that person.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Where does this stop?
Where does it stop?
Where does it stop? Yeah.
Does the fish that needs the water to breathe need to tip the water?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Before he gets eaten? Is that weird?
It just kept going down the line of how things, tipping out every step of the way. Anyway, I'm getting lost in that. That was a little bit of a mind melt right there.
Well, here's one more, actually, that we can go off on a tangent on. So KVDC 2008 says, perception becomes reality. Basically, everyone thinks the crew are poorly paid and financially destitute and need your gratuities. The perception is reinforced by cruise managers, so passengers tip more generously. That financial generosity has become a new baseline for income for many cruise staffers, and the gratuities are no longer voluntary, but more like voluntold. I guess he's saying that you're told that you have to do it. So, I don't take out the automatic gratuities, but what I do is prepare cash tips for a cabin steward and butler, if applicable, any particular helpful staff, staff we had regular interactions on. He says the cash tips isn't particularly large, just slightly more than a token of appreciation, and more like a financial acknowledgement. So I like his point that he says perception becomes reality. Everyone thinks the crew are poorly paid. And this was another point that I made in passing a little bit in the video, is that, you have this belief that they're poorly paid, but they keep renewing their contracts year after year. In fact, here's a statistic I just saw for the next video we're going to do. Apparently, for every one job that the cruise lines put up when they're going on a hiring spree in the Philippines or India or wherever, for every one job, they have 100 applicants. And once people get their job on the cruise line, they have an 80% retention rate. That means 80% of them continue to work, renew their contracts.
So they value those jobs.
Yeah, and if you anybody out there is a business owner or a hiring manager, 80% is pretty freaking good retention rate.
Absolutely.
So if the job is so terrible and they get paid so poorly, why do they keep doing it?
Yeah.
And somebody early on in the comments had said something like, they actually responded to that point, which I loved, because I think that's a really good point. And they said, hey, just because they have bad jobs, or just because they keep doing the job doesn't mean it's a good job. It could be a bad job. Lots of people get stuck in bad jobs. And, okay, this is true, but if I see somebody stuck in a bad job, I'm not going to go up and be like, hey, here's a tip because you're stuck in a bad job. No, I'm going to be like, hey, here's a tip, here's some advice. How about you
get a new job?
Get a new job. Yeah, that's the tip I will give. Advice, not a tip, not money. Okay, three more comments. Come Sail Away With Me says, I'll tip at least twice this much, but even if I gave $60 to my steward and the $60 to the dining staff, they'd be better off than if they got their shares of the $133 auto tip. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're gonna be happy with that. Then Alice Williams said, problem for newbies on our recent NCL cruise. We met a couple with 2 kids on their first cruise ever. They were shocked to realize they'd have to shell out $560 they didn't know about. Yeah.
That is a shock, isn't it?
That is a shock. And, if they book through a travel agent and the travel agent didn't give them any heads up on that, they should totally find a different travel agent, because that's, I feel like there should be a disclosure about that. And then Anonymous says, the cruiser is on vacation from work, not our responsibility to calculate the disbursement of fees to crew members of a multi-billion-dollar industry. We pay the ticket price. We paid the price of the ticket as advertised. Yeah, exactly. If they need to charge more for the ticket price so that they can afford to pay their crew the guaranteed salary, then do that,
I think what everybody wants is for the CEO of whatever cruise line to say, hey, I'll take $1 million less this year. And then spread that out across, his employees.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens. Is obviously they just raise the ticket price of the cruise, so we end up having to pay more, whether it is through tipping or it is through just increased ticket price. Because the reason that rich people are rich is because they find a way to keep that money.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway.
Rich keep getting rich and the poor keep getting poor. And at the end of the day, sorry, I don't remember the rest of the song. It's from Les Mis. I think we're all a little bit colder, I believe. I was a cruise travel agent for 20 years pre-pandemic. Customers angry about surprise beer, where we had, errors and emissions insurance.
I couldn't understand. You were laughing. What was it?
Sorry. So Steve said, I was a travel agent for 20 years pre-pandemic. Customers angry about surprise fees, like the family of 4 gratuities.
Yeah.
That's why we had E&O insurance, errors and emissions insurance.
Yeah.
So I guess Alice, that couple or that family could maybe go back on the travel agent and ask for some compensation for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty more comments.
Yeah, let's we're at 53 minutes here. Let's do an hour. Let's do an hour. So
a few more comments.
7 more minutes here.
Okay. So there's a lot of people that are making the point that when you dine out, you don't go to the back and pay for the dishwashing staff. You don't pay for the cook. You tip your waiter, and I wish I could find that Aussie guys, but here's one from Britain. So, Moriah Sutherland 7443. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. We are British and only tip for extra service, not for people doing their job. Charge a price for the cruise, pay the staff a living wage, which is more than I get in pension. I am going on HAL in January, and tipping is putting me off the cruise. I will enjoy the experience, but I regard a smile and a thank you enough for serving a drink that I have already paid for. We went to the USA 20 years ago, got a taxi ride from the car hire to the airport, but the guy was obviously not pleased that we did not tip him for helping us to get our one bag each out of the car, and we have not been back. USA, get your act in order, or more people will not come back. Oh no, one taxi driver, and they're not coming back to the U.S.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna admit, like, when we travel, which is pretty frequently, we get Ubers
Yeah.
to and from the airport, to and from the cruise port, that kind of stuff. So
so many of those Uber drivers don't get out and help you with their bags.
that was my point.
Yeah.
And like, I always tip or almost always tip my Uber drivers, but the ones that won't get out of the car and pull the bag out of the trunk, I tip them less. I appreciate it when people
Yeah.
will. I appreciate it when people will take the bag out, and so I get the point that, like, it's just a bag.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. But it's like, why would I give somebody a tip for just the act of doing the thing they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
I give the tip for them doing something a little bit beyond the thing that they're supposed to do. And if they somehow say something really nice to me on the ride, or really resonates with me or something like that, I'm going to tip a little bit extra. So I just think that tipping, the concept of tipping, isn't just doing what you're supposed to do. It is doing the concept of tipping is to give money for an exemplary job, and I just think that we're losing sight of that.
Yeah.
We got another message from Steve.
Steve said, when I was a waiter in the 80s, we tipped 20% to the busboy and 10% to the bartender. Tipping the host was optional, but a good way to get good tables. No tip sharing with back of house. Okay, so, yeah, and a lot of waiters have chimed in on this, that, the diners give the tips to the waiters, but then they will, what did you call it?
Stiff?
Tip out? No.
Oh, tip out, yeah.
Yeah, tip out to the
back
rest of the staff.
Yeah.
So that they're getting something. But, honestly, the back staff a lot of times are paid a little bit better than the waiters, is what I've heard, because the waiters are going to get tips.
Yeah.
And the back staff don't have a chance to do that. So, the cook is going to be making more than the waiter.
There's some, when I was younger, I worked some service jobs, bartending and waiting tables, and there were some places that I worked where it was mandatory that you tipped out a percentage of your tips to the back of the house, and there was some places where it was like, when the back of the house helped you a lot, you just gave them some money because they helped you a lot, and that was incentive to get them to support you in your job so you could do your job better. And like, tipping, I think, works best when it's like when it's merit based. So like, in any situation, if you're gonna get more money because you do a better job, you're gonna do a better job because you want more money. So I just think that should be the way that it works. And if tipping is just like expected, what is the incentive to do a better job other than just your work ethic or whatever? But I don't know. It's good when it incentivizes people to do a better job, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if tipping is just expected, then it isn't, like, I expect to get paid, right? I expect my boss to give me a paycheck. So if tipping is just expected, it's just like a paycheck. So,
yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
But, okay, so one more comment, because I actually had meant to address this earlier. Because we got a couple of these, but I'll read out George Maldonada 8662. I have a question. Do you remove the auto tips on day 1 of the cruise or on the last day of cruising? So this is a great question, because a lot of people haven't removed auto gratuities before. So, you want me to answer it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we wait until the auto gratuities show up on our shipboard account. And we've been doing a lot of Carnival lately. That's usually on the second to last day. I know on some cruise lines, like I believe on Princess, they charge, if I remember correctly, they charge you every day. They will put whatever that day's daily gratuity is. So you'll see the charge of, $19 every day on Princess. But so we wait until we at least see the auto gratuities on there, and then we go down to guest services. So usually this is on the second to last day, and ask to have them removed. Our strategy is to go down late in the evening at like 10 o'clock, or sometimes later. We stay up later, so we go down there, and there's usually not a line. If you're a morning person, go down before 8 o'clock. If you wait until the last day and, like 11 o'clock, 11 in the morning on the last day.
Don't do it.
Yeah, you're going to be like, hey,
I just want to tell a couple of short stories about, so, and I think it was Alice. Somebody said that they've thought about taking automatic gratuities off, but they don't want to be looked at as cheap or feel cheap. That's totally a thing, and it was a thing for me for sure. And
he actually did it before me. I was too scared to do it.
I was scared to do it. I'm like, I want to tip cash, and I'm like, but I have to go down to guest services and deal with this. So
yeah.
I like the first. We've done it like 3 or 4 times now. It's only somewhat recently, and we cruised kind of a lot. So yeah. So anyway, the first, I don't remember it was the first time, but on one occasion, on at least 1 or 2 occasions, I went down, and the person at guest services was just polite and fine, and it just wasn't that big of a deal in my mind than actually doing it, because it's hard to go down there and you want to like explain yourself and be like, I'm still gonna tip, I'm not
Actually, just a quick interjection, somebody in the comments said tip the person that at guest services that takes off your
exactly
so,
takes off your
and I want to start doing that. So
but anyway, on one of there's two times I've taken off gratuities, and you were with me on one of them. It was on on the Legend on our last cruise. On that occasion, Emily and I went down to take off our gratuities, second to last day. We went late, so there was no line at guest services, which is what we just suggested to you.
Yeah.
And we walk up to the guy, and he did like I was like, I just want to take off my gratuities, and he did a like a sneer after. He didn't say anything, but he totally sneered and was judgmental because I was taking off my gratuities, and I wanted to say, hey man, I'm gonna tip. I just like to do but I didn't. I just was like, go ahead and sneer, and I guess I probably smiled and like just walked away from it. But on another occasion, I went up. I told the person at guest services I want to take off my automatic gratuities. I think they were having a bad day, and literally there was no greeting from that person. There was no words. There was literally no words spoken through the whole thing. I walked up. They didn't say, how can I help you? I just came out and said I want to take off my gratuities. They just looked at me, like kind of kept looking at me, typed on the computer, and then printed out the receipt, handed it to me, never even looked away. And I walked away, and so there wasn't a sneer, but there was just this dead look in their eyes, like what are you doing? And so it was pretty intense. So it's it takes like 2 minutes. You just do it, you get it done. You realize that you might get a little bit of attitude from
Steve says, you're too nice. I would have told him I decided not to tip at all just to annoy him more. So, yeah. And then Lurky Lou says, I'm late to the conversation, I believe. Should this be done towards the end of the cruise? Could they flag your card somehow to let cruise employees know that you removed your tip? So we did talk about this more in length at the beginning, and you can go back and watch the whole live stream if you want, but we do it at the end because that's when they appear on our onboard account, and so we just want to make sure that there's no mistakes. Whatever, we only have to go down one time.
I don't.
But I
don't know. Can you? We've never tried to take them off before they show up on our sail and sign.
Yeah, we've never tried. So, but on other cruise lines, like I was saying, like on Princess, they charge you every day or whatever. So you could just go and say, can you take them off, and can you
take them off for
and
the
stop
rest of the
them?
cruise?
Yeah. And so I don't think that it matters, honestly. I know people worry that there's like some list of the bad passengers that aren't tipping, but I really don't think that the crew, for the most part, worries about it. I mean, think about that list. It's just not practical.
It's not, and
so I just don't believe it. And we've never had an experience where we felt like we were getting treated except for when we asked for them taken off at guest services.
Yeah.
But as far as just general crew that may or may not know that we had taken off, like our room steward or waiting staff, we've never had that before.
Yeah, there's always that fear that your room steward knows because he's got access to your toothbrush. Yeah, you don't. That's such a terrible thought, someone messing with your toothbrush. But I really don't think those folks. I don't think they have a list of people that take off their gratuities.
Yeah.
They know that they get cash tips. I'm sure that they know that that's a good possibility, and they don't want to sacrifice that. They also, as you talked about a minute ago, really value their jobs, so they don't want to put in their jobs in jeopardy in the least. They love the fact that they get to work at those cruise lines. So I don't think you need to worry too much about that.
And then Steve just points out that he tips the steward as soon as I meet them. Better service throughout. And that's a good point, because we've never actually done it where we tip first, but I know a lot of people will tip, maybe they're like, okay, I have this much money to tip the room steward, I'm going to give him half now, just to show that I am like,
Steve, that's not a bad idea, because
and then tip more at the end.
But if your room steward knows, or your waiter or your bartender, every time you walk up, they're going to be getting some cash in their pocket. They're going to give you great service.
Yeah.
They're going to clean your room a little better. That's actually a really good idea. Yeah. Just spread it out throughout the cruise. So there's a good tip.
Not something we've tried before, but I know a lot of people swear by that. So
Cool.
Well, I think we made it to an hour.
Oh, we got a little bit more. I pre-tip my room steward also. Yeah. I think that's actually something we could. Thank you, folks. We do this live stream, and we actually learn.
Get a couple of tips ourselves.
Get some tips ourselves. Yeah. Is that it?
Well, we have plenty more comments to go through from the original video, but
thank you, Great Live. You should do it more often. Really appreciate that. We're gonna try to do it more often.
Yeah.
Like we're shooting for like the once a week thing. We'll do our best.
I think if we do it more often, we'll maybe iron out those technical difficulties we seem to have at the beginning of every one. It's like always something new comes up.
Yeah.
But
we're dragging it on.
We're working on it.
Thank you guys.
So thank you so much.
Steve, it was fun to talk to you, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Going to the beginning of life. That's nice.